They mocked him in front of everyone. They thought this would be another easy win in court. But what happened next? It left the entire room speechless. The courtroom had that same stale, recycled air smell David always hated. Half coffee, half disinfectant, with a hint of something older, like secrets rotting under the polished wood. The benches groaned like tired old men every time someone shifted. And that buzzing overhead? The fluorescent lights hummed like they were just as irritated as he was. David Carter sat there, dressed in his best navy blue suit, the same one he wore to Marcus's high school graduation last spring. Back then, his son walked across a stage beaming like he was about to take on the world. Today, that same boy sat 2 rows ahead, shoulders hunched, eyes on the floor, as if guilt could pull the tiles apart and swallow him whole. David wasn't here to fight the system, at least not at first. He came to protect his son, plain and simple. Marcus had made a mistake, or rather, a mistake had found him. A friend, some kid with quick hands and slow sense, slipped a pair of expensive headphones into his jacket pocket at an electronics store. Cameras caught Marcus standing right there. Wrong place, wrong time, classic setup. Now, the state wanted to make an example out of him, as if a teenager with an almost perfect GPA was some hardened criminal running a crime ring in aisle 5. David's calloused hands gripped the edge of the bench, knuckles pale. 30 years at the steel plant, and this was his reward. Watching strangers weigh his son's future like it was a bargain bin item. He'd worked shifts so long his bones hummed at night. He'd missed birthdays, skipped meals, and swallowed pride thicker than tar. All so Marcus could have something better. And now some man in a tailored suit, who probably never worked a hard day in his life, stood ready to strip all of it away with a few slick words. But before court began, David did something that showed who he really was. Across the aisle, an elderly white woman fumbled with her cane, trying to balance her purse and a folder stuffed with papers. She looked ready to collapse like a poorly stacked deck of cards. David rose without thinking. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, steady, respectful. "Let me help you." Her eyes flicked up, startled, then softened as she nodded. David eased her into her seat, adjusted her cane so it wouldn't slide, and gave a polite nod before returning to his bench. He didn't do it for applause, didn't do it to be noticed. But Lord have mercy, he was noticed. That's when it started. The whispers. 2 young men in cheap department store suits, sitting at the prosecution's table, leaned toward each other like gossiping teens. One smirked, muttered something under his breath. David didn't catch it all, but he caught enough. Boy sure plays the part, huh? Boy. Funny how a word could weigh heavier than a freight train. How it could carry centuries of chains in just 3 letters. That word slithered into his ears, crawled under his skin, and coiled up in his gut, like a snake with venom to spare. David stared straight ahead, jaw tight enough to crack a molar. Not today, he told himself. Not here. You can't afford that right now. The bailiff barked for order. The judge entered, old white, face carved from stone, wearing a robe that looked like it had soaked up 40 years of bias. Everyone rose. David rose, too, shoulders squared, chin up. But even standing tall, he felt that weight pressing down, like every stare in the room was saying, "You don't belong here unless you're in cuffs." The judge's voice was gravel, cold and dry. State versus Marcus Carter. And just like that, his boy's name rolled off that tongue like it was something dirty. The prosecutor took center stage, slick-haired, mid-40s, with a smile sharp enough to slice bread. He spoke like he was auditioning for a courtroom drama. His words dripped with fake courtesy and real poison. "Your Honor," he began, "this isn't about a pair of headphones. This is about a pattern of behavior, about respect for the law. A pattern of behavior." David wanted to laugh. Hell, he almost did. Marcus had never so much as dented a mailbox. But here they were, painting his son like he was public enemy number one. The prosecutor strutted around, talking about deterrence, about responsibility, about sending a message. Then, like the devil sprinkling sugar on sin, he added, "Some families just don't teach those values." And the courtroom chuckled. Chuckled. Like Marcus's life was the punchline to their private joke. David felt his heartbeat thudding in his ears. He looked at Marcus, his boy who once stood on tiptoe to hug him after scoring his first basketball point. Now sitting small, drowning in a suit that wasn't his, with shame stitched into every seam. Across the aisle, the defense attorney, young, nervous, suit hanging off him like it came from his daddy's closet, stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. We're talking about a single charge." "Overruled," the judge snapped without blinking, like he'd been waiting for the chance to swat a fly. David's hand curled into a fist on his thigh. He loosened it slow, like diffusing a bomb, and sucked in a breath through his teeth. "So that's how it's gonna be," he thought. "Stack the deck, then tell me it's fair play. Same old game, just a shinier table." Then came the kicker. The prosecutor strolled to the defense table like he owned it, leaned one hand on the wood, and looked down at Marcus like he was studying a bug on the floor. "Marcus Carter," he said, voice dripping fake sweetness. "Son, you're a smart young man, aren't you? Honor roll, right? That's what I hear." Marcus swallowed hard, nodded. "And yet, here you are." The words landed like punches. "Sitting in a courtroom because you couldn't make a better decision." The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the lights. Even the court reporter paused her keys for half a second, like she didn't want to miss a beat. David's heart thudded like a drumline in his chest. He wanted to leap up, wanted to grab that man by the collar and shake the smug right off his face. But he didn't move. Not yet. Marcus stammered. I didn't take anything." "Oh, I'm sure," the prosecutor said, smirk widening. "Just like every innocent man in every courtroom since the beginning of time." The chuckles started again, quiet, sharp, slicing through the silence. Somebody in the back snorted, and that's when David felt something shift inside him, like a cable snapping on a bridge, like something deep giving way. He stood. Again. This time, it wasn't slow. The bench screeched loud enough to make the bailiff flinch. David's shadow fell long across the aisle as he rose to his full height, shoulders squared like stone pillars. The room froze. Conversations died mid-breath. Even the prosecutor stiffened, though his grin didn't quite leave his face. David stepped forward once, then twice. Not fast, just steady, like a man who knows where he's going. His shoes clicked on the floor, sharp as a clock ticking down. The bailiff moved, hand out, but David lifted a palm, calm, firm, like a man saying, "Don't test me unless you're ready to fail." The bailiff stopped. David turned his head, slow, until his eyes locked on the prosecutor. And Lord, if looks could split concrete, that man would have been a pile of dust. His voice came low, rich, steady enough to hush every cough, every creak in that courtroom. "You done?" he asked. The prosecutor blinked, thrown for half a beat. "Excuse me?" "I said," David repeated, each word like a brick dropping in water. You done talking down to my son like he's trash on your shoe? Gasps rippled through the room like wind through tall grass. The judge slammed his gavel, voice booming. Order! Mr. Carter, you are out of line. David didn't take his eyes off the prosecutor. Didn't blink, didn't flinch. No, he said, voice low but strong enough to shake the air. What's out of line is you standing there acting like you know him. Acting like you know me. You don't know a damn thing about what it takes to raise a boy right in a world built to break him. For a long, hot second, the room didn't breathe. The only sound was the buzz of those lights, loud as a wasp swarm in David's ears. His hands shook, not with fear, but with the kind of fury that comes from loving something too much to watch it burn. And then, chaos. The judge barking orders, the bailiff stepping in, murmurs rising like a storm tide. David stood still in the center of it all, carved out of stone, while the system scrambled around him like ants on a hill someone just kicked over. We're standing at the edge now. The air's so thick with tension you could cut it with a blade. And trust me, what's about to happen next? It won't just shake this courtroom. It'll break it wide open. Don't you dare blink now. The noise in the courtroom buzzed like a hornet's nest. The judge's gavel hammered again and again, but order wasn't coming easy this time. People were leaning in, whispering like they were front row at a heavyweight fight, waiting to see who'd throw the next punch. David stood there, still and unshaken, like a mountain in the middle of a storm. His eyes burned, not wild, but controlled, like a man who knew his truth and wasn't about to let anyone twist it. The bailiff hovered close, one hand grazing his holster, the other outstretched like he could hold back a tidal wave with 5 fingers. Mr. Carter, the judge barked, voice trembling with the kind of anger that comes from fear. I will not warn you again. Sit down, or you will be held. But the judge never finished, because at that very moment, the courtroom door creaked open. Slow. Hinge screaming like a warning. Heads turned, whispers snapped louder than the buzz of those tired lights overhead. And in walked her. A woman in a charcoal gray suit, heels clicking like gunshots on marble. Mid-40s, sharp eyes behind rimless glasses, the kind of presence that didn't ask for respect. It took it. She strode straight to the defense table, tossed a leather folder down so hard it thudded like a gavel. Your Honor, she said, voice cold and clean as steel. I represent the Carter family now. Gasps rippled through the room like wind tearing through dry leaves. The defense attorney, baby-faced and drowning in sweat, looked like Christmas came early, and he wasn't ready for the gifts. The judge blinked. And you are? Vanessa Price, Civil Rights Division, Federal Counsel. She didn't wait for permission to continue. And I'm moving for immediate dismissal of these charges based on violation of constitutional rights. The prosecutor, slick, let out a laugh. Nervous, tight. On what grounds? Vanessa flipped the folder open, pulling out a stack of papers thick enough to break bones. On the grounds that your arresting officers failed to read this young man his rights. On the grounds that surveillance footage you conveniently ignored shows another individual taking the merchandise. On the grounds that this entire proceeding reeks of selective prosecution. And if this court doesn't see it, the federal court will. Boom! The words hit like dynamite tossed under the floorboards. The jury shifted in their seats, whispering louder now, necks craning like weeds chasing sunlight. Slick's smirk cracked, first in the corners, then all over. He stammered, That evidence isn't admissible. Vanessa didn't even blink. Save it for the ethics board. They'll love the part where you suggested prior infractions to bias a jury. She tapped the papers with a manicured nail. Click, click, like a hammer on a coffin. The judge's face went pale. He fumbled with his glasses, cleared his throat twice. "Ms. Price, this is highly irregular." "What's irregular?" she cut in, voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Is dragging a kid with no record through a kangaroo court because of the color of his skin." The room went dead silent. Not a cough, not a breath. Just the hum of the lights and the pounding of 1,000 guilty hearts. David's chest swelled. Not with pride, not yet, but with something heavier. Relief, maybe. Vindication wrapped in disbelief. His fists unclenched for the first time all day. He turned, caught Marcus's eyes. The boy looked stunned, tears shimmering like rain in the sunlight. Vanessa straightened her jacket. "So, Your Honor, shall I file the dismissal here? Or do we move this circus to a federal stage where cameras will be waiting?" The judge shifted in his chair, robe rustling like dry leaves in a windstorm. His voice, when it came, was brittle. Case dismissed. And just like that, the gavel fell. Not like thunder, but like surrender. The sound cracked through the courtroom, and for the first time that day, David smiled. Not wide, not cocky, just enough to say, "I told you. You don't know me. You never did."